So very quick background. Well over a year, we discontinued the use of our GIS web. And I know that had a lot of features that were applicable to you and the people you work with. And we resurfaced, I would say, an interim solution for that. And we had a talk a little bit less than a year ago in September of last year here, where we talked about some of the features that we had, how you would use that new system, and then listen to you about the needs that you had going forward. And so this past April, we had a new release where we tried to incorporate as much of those things as possible and even enhance some of the features that we still had in that process. So what we want to do today is point out those new enhanced features and perhaps give you a nice little arc of things that are in there that we think would be of use to you. One of those things that I have is that how many of you have smartphones? If you would, yeah, right? And I'm sure that the majority of you have not read the user's manual on that smartphone, right? But you have figured out how to use it. And so this thing is designed for you to play with, to tinker with, and to figure things out. And so we want to lower that threshold of what might be an intimidation factor and saying, look, there might be some things in there that you weren't aware of. In fact, we enjoy doing these types of talks or training seminars because it's a chance for sometimes for you all to present things to us that we're like, wow, that's an application that we weren't aware of, that how you would use a particular tool. So we digest that information, whether you formally put it on a card and ask, or whether we pick something up about, oh, if that's a use, is there a way that we can continue to develop that or enhance that, right? So that's a little bit of why we're here. We have a number of tools that we want to show off. We may not go through that in a linear way, all right? We might bounce around a little bit, and both Lauren and Blake are there to hold me accountable to make sure that I don't leave anything behind and kind of glance over that, because my mind will start to wander and I'll probably get a little bit involved with some of the questions that you ask. All right. So first thing, we found this site is designed to work on a variety of platforms and browsers. It tends to be the most successful in Chrome, all right? If you use Microsoft Edge or Firefox, we have found that some people in Edge, based on the user, based on their own local environment, will find that something quirky will present itself. Example, last week, people were telling us, hey, the aerial photographs aren't coming up, and we're going and we're checking and they're coming up just fine. There's nothing wrong there. And it turns out there was something about their unique setup of Edge on their local computer. All right. So while we try to help and facilitate that and program for all, know that there tends to be greater success rate if you're using Chrome. We won't get into it here, but this upgrade is also designed to be much more user-friendly on your phone and your tablets. All right. It used to be that you had to really, okay. So I would say that there's kind of three basic areas on the browser or the viewer. You have what here up top, which is our search and parcel filter functions. If you're wanting to find a parcel, a place on the map, you have a toolbar here of a number of tools that we'll go through. And then once you've selected or found a parcel, you'll have here what we call our parcel information, where you can get to access to what we'll refer to as a parcel report card, right? I'll kind of reach back into my education background and refer to something as a report card, right? You can search for a property just by typing in the address, the long pin or the short pin. It'll search through the owner. It'll bring up a variety of that information that way. So if I wanted to search for, I'll type in my last name, Rittenhouse. You'll notice that it'll find primary owners, secondary owners, anything that has that wild card in it, right? So it gives you that flexibility if you're not quite sure what you're trying to find, all right, or discover. Parcel filter, which we think is an underutilized tool. Blake described it just minutes before this, is that this is flexible and intended to be able to absorb as much as your imagination might be able to conjure up, all right? The idea here is that if you've got a question about certain types of properties, we also have the parcel filter, which we think is an underutilized tool. Blake described it just minutes before this, is that this is flexible and intended to be able to absorb as much as your imagination might be able to conjure up. All right. The idea here is that if you've got a question about certain types of properties or things, we have tried to, in advance, intersect our parcels with a variety of layers in the county. So one perhaps easy, straightforward measure is we could say, well, I'm interested in all the properties that have sold during the month of May and June. So I can go down here for the last sale date. I'm going to choose 1st of May is my first, and then the end of June as the last date. We're going to let it think for a second. And now it's highlighted all those properties there on the map. All right. Now, we're spatial people, but we know that you like tables and lists. And so one of the new things that we've incorporated in this is that you can now click on a button that says the list, and it's going to tell you that you have 846 properties. And just as a quick shortcut, here's the PIN, the owner name, the street address, and the mailing address for each of those properties. All right. And you can scroll through those. If you select one, it'll show you where that is on the map. Likewise, if you're like, well, I need something a little bit more formal that I need to export out and print, you can click on a table and it's going to give you that spreadsheet. And from there, you can export that spreadsheet to a PDF or to an Excel file. And you'll have a list of all this information for all those properties that were sold based on that filter or those parameters. It's not singular, right? You have a variety of ways that you can do this. So we could say, well, I'm interested not just in those sales, but perhaps I've got a client that is interested in the sales in a particular elementary school district. So I want to know, out of those 846 properties, how many of them were in the Brownsville district, all right? And I can further refine it that way, right? Now, I am not going to pretend that I can masquerade as a realtor, all right? But we want to demonstrate that with all these different kind of components, you can make these singular or overlapped in any way that might be interesting to you. So how many of those might have a lust buffer or leaking underground storage tank? From those, okay, now we've limited that down to, so we've gone from 77 to 49 properties that sold during those 2-month periods that might have a leaking underground storage tank, according to DEQ, that is in the Brownsville School District, right? So you have a ways to use this filter to your advantage. And instead of just looking at it spatially, you can then turn around and have a list or a table of that information. Notice that these are blue and lit up there on the screen. I can still display and look at other things, but if I want to clear these filters, there's a reset button here at the bottom of the screen. If I click that, it'll just bring me back to nothing in particular being sorted or filtered out. Okay. Some quick updates to what we have. We might have changed some of the names from the last time that we were here in September. We've got layers and we've added new layers, and we've tried to condense so that things aren't so distracting. All right. Some quick updates to what we have. We might have changed some of the names from the last time that we were here in September. We've got layers and we've added new layers, and we've tried to condense so that things aren't so distracting. Previous iterations of this, you would have a number of layers that may not be of interest to everybody. 2 examples of this were the zoning overlays. We've collapsed that so that there's a number of things that might be related to zoning being checked, but none of these in this submenu will show up until you check kind of the large top box there, right? So in order to make it a little bit cleaner, that starts off being collapsed, but know that anything that has that type of symbol, there might be other layers that are kind of sorted or placed under that subheading. So I wanted to point that out, that it's something that we didn't have before. We had a number of people who said, well, I need the layers that are most important to me at the top. And then that list kept growing and growing and growing, and then it became a bit harder for people to find what they might be looking for. So we've tried to nest some layers in different places for you. Okay. In the map, previously referred to as base maps, we've added a number of new layers. We've got the 2022 photography, previous years of photography from the state. We have this nice kind of I would say hybrid map that has got state data, and then as you zoom in, it reveals local data. But we also have an aerial photograph that has other types of road and building information on it at the same time. So instead of you being caught with just looking at aerial photography, you now have the aerial photography with roads, driveways, and buildings overlaid over top of that for your ability to navigate and see for the things that you're looking for. So we'll continue to enhance and add components to this map page. Consider that to be like a tablecloth and things that you would put underneath some of the layers that you would like to see displayed. Now, here, I'll just go ahead and jump around. One thing that you'll find here is that if I click on a particular parcel, it brings up our parcel report card information where we have summary, cards, improvements, history. And we listened to you last time where you said it's nice to have all of that, but having to export it separately is a bit difficult. So if you click the print button, and I'll try to give it enough time, it consolidates all that information to one clean parcel card that has all that available at once, right? So that is in a PDF so that you can print that out. You also now have the ability to highlight, select, and copy out things that might be relevant that you did not have before. People, we have a link for Eagle View. So if you click here on the Eagle View button, it'll bring up a photograph. In this case, you'll see that this is an aerial photograph that was taken from between February and April of this year. All right. So for that particular parcel, you have that information. And from this, I can choose other years for this particular parcel also. So if I want to know what it looked like back in 2016, I can get that photograph of that too. And you can choose from this pull down menu, or you can look at it from the side. And on the side, you're saying, well, wait, what does this mean? We've got northeast, southwest. I'm going to go back to the most recent photography. You not just overhead, but you can get it in the oblique. So if I click on this switch to oblique, it'll show me side views. And I can rotate and see it from the front, from the north, west, south, and east. So I'm going to pause for dramatic effect there. Point and play. So if I am in the parcel, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to a different location just to kind of give you a sense of how this works. Right, so let's put some of these features together. So I'm going to search for 1506 Marcella Court. Right? So you'll notice our most recent photography is not up to date, right? But if I go here for Eagle View and click on this property, I can see that updated information there. And I can see from February of 25. Working on it. We know which home went in there first in Brook Hill. All right. Previous. And you can start to kind of up. All right. And again, if you click here on the switch to oblique, it'll show you these at different angles. Be patient with it though. You're looking at high resolution photography based on your internet connection and perhaps the other activities that are going on in your office. It could take a moment. Sometimes I will think that it's broken, and then it's like, okay, just we had to wake up the sleeping giant. But this is a good example of, hey, I want to know what it looks like from this angle, from that angle. I can spin things around based on what a client might be interested in. The cards, if there's more than one card on the property, overall just summary that will include some stuff that may not be as relevant or a bit of a distraction, right? But then all of that again is consolidated there in that one particular card. All right, so other items here in the, I'm just gonna go back and hit the home button here. And I have one parcel that has already been selected, so I'm gonna clear that out and I'm gonna minimize that. And we'll go back to our other base map so it looks a little bit cleaner with what we're doing. All right. Let's talk about the draw tool. All right. The draw tool has a little bit more functionality, but at times I think some of the features are hidden. And so we wanted to point out that with a little bit more digging, you might find some functionality here. So let's go look for a property that I think will be able to show us a number of things. So I'm going to look here at 4603. Oh, 4603 Garth Road. All right, so I wanted to point out a couple of things. One, we have cases where we have stacked parcels, right? One example might be a condominium, right? You have one parcel that has many properties. In cases, if you manually selected that before, unless you knew what was going on, you weren't quite sure what parcel you had clicked on. We've introduced a feature now that will say, hey, this location has more than one parcel, and these are the parcels that are there also, right? So in this case, there's a tower on this parcel, a cell tower. And if I wanted to know more information about that, I could search for 41-28T plus, and it would pull up that information in the parcel report card. So you've got to notice that in cases where you have multiple parcels stacked on top of each other, that you have to, there's a level of intentionality within the browser or the viewer to let you know that that is going on. So this is trying to give you that alert that there's a bit more going on here, right? So I'm going to go back to that other parcel out there in Whitehall, which I think is 4603 Garth Road. In this case, we have a cell tower. All right, I'm going to go to my map, and I'm going to look at the aerial photograph. And we're just going to zoom in here. And so there's a cell tower, and perhaps a client wants to know, well, hey, I'm interested in local properties. I want to know how far is that cell tower from the property line. Now, I could go and use my measure tool, but one of the comments that we had that we want to improve is that you can do one measurement at a time. You do that measurement, you've got to clear it and do another measurement. All right. In the draw function, you have the ability to draw lines, but it'll record the distances in there too. So I'm going to go to my draw tool here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a symbol for that cell tower, right? And I'm going to put that symbol right there. Perhaps I want to label that as a cell tower. So I'm going to type cell tower. Now, there's more here you can play with. All right, I can rotate that symbol. I can give it a background. Maybe I want that background to have a certain color. All right, maybe I want it to have a red color. I can change the color of the font, right? However that is, but I'm going to put that label here. So now I've got the cell tower. And I've decided I want to measure how far it is. So I'm going to give this a line, and I'm going to check show length measurement. What unit do I want to use? Feet. And now I can measure how far it is from the property line, and it's going to tell me how far it is. You can change your colors. You can draw points, lines, polygons. You can treat this like your own Magnadoodle or Etch-a-Sketch. All right. And these things, when you go to print your map, these graphics will transfer to that printed map. All right. We would like to expand the print functionality and make it more dynamic. This is real, the native use of this is a parcel viewer. All right. So we want to continue to enhance our map and our printing map functions, but you have the ability to then start to put other text and features. So I can zoom out. Right, I'm going to turn my toolbar off here for a second and go to a different place. All right, those graphics will stay put. If I want to get rid of them, I can go back to draw and just say clear all, and it'll clear those graphics. But you have the ability to put in points, lines, polygons, pre-made shapes, fill colors, outline colors, halos, all right? Have fun. I mean, that is a wild Friday night, all right? back. Let's zoom back into that area again. 4603, I believe, is that what it was? So you have a better memory than me. I'm going to have to make sure that I use the correct tool. So let's turn the draw tool off. I'm just going to pan back down here. I'm going to deselect that. Zoom in. I can now go to export. I can decide whether I want my layout to be portrait or landscape. All right, I'm going to do portrait, print. This can take a moment depending on what layers I have in here. And I will tell you, we want to improve this, but we have a very standard template that can only absorb so much information. So if you want to start turning on a bunch of layers, there's a capacity for how much that legend can take on. All right, not ideal, but we're trying to find a way to get that sunroof without having to have the 6 CD changer. All right, so we're trying to see how we can modify that. But once I hit that, you'll notice that we've got a result. Now, I chose not to, but I can, for advanced, use certain scales, right? And the result, we can look at this preview, and now I have a legend scale bar there at the top, right? And my graphics have transferred. I could then turn around if I wanted to print out that parcel